You want to talk about Mark Carney, who is the father of net zero on a global basis. He created all these business organizations with investors and so on. It's falling apart now. Thank goodness the whole green scheme is falling apart now.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in downtown Toronto, and I'm with Catherine Swift. She is the president of the Coalition of Concerned Manufacturers and Businesses Canada. And Catherine just took part in a panel discussion here put on by the Economic Club. Can you sum up what the gist of the panel discussion was all about?
Well, I think the gist of it was that given the Trump factor, of course, that was a fairly dominant theme. Yep. How does that change things going forward? You know, and naturally, most of the attendees here today were from energy producers. For example, Enbridge was here, or analysts. There were some like analysts from the energy analysts from the banks, or one was from Deloitte's. So they were people that were analyzing what was going on in the energy industry. So that the focus was really where are we going from here? And of course, the Minister of Natural Resources, Jonathan Wilkinson, kicked off the conference first thing.
And you know, Catherine, let me jump in here. First of all, I wish I knew Enbridge was here. I would have come earlier and asked them what this delivery charge is on my bill. It's like somebody in a cube van coming to deliver my natural gas. It's almost as much as the single biggest item, the carbon tax. But Jonathan Wilkinson, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, as you said, he addressed the crowd. Almost a decade, the Trudeau Liberals have been in power. They have stymied pipeline development. Justin Trudeau shooed away the likes of Germany and Japan from a $1 trillion liquefied natural gas deal, saying there's no business case. How does someone like Minister Wilkinson go in front of energy producers and not get booed off the stage?
Well, people are too polite is one of the reasons. I agree with you. Unfortunately, he had left by the time I was scheduled to make my remarks, which I was sad about because I wish he had been in the audience. He wouldn't have liked it, needless to say. But you know, he did sort of, it was interesting because I was curious what he'd do because the government knows they're up against it now in a number of different ways. Yes. And so he did actually concede, and this was the first time that, again, I was talking to the people at the conference who are energy experts. I'm not an energy expert, but I represent an organization of consumers, business consumers of energy. So that's, you know, what I was asked to bring to the table. But it was interesting because they were saying they had never before heard Wilkinson say we're going to be using oil and gas for the foreseeable future. And he did say that. Now, he didn't come out in favor of pipelines, though. So I thought, how can you have one without the other, right? If you're going to use it, it's got to get to your business or home or whatever somehow. So you're going to need pipelines. Also, the whole so-called diversification of markets. We know we're overly dependent on the U.S. And mind you, I mean, we're lucky to have the strongest economy in the world, even though it's got a bit of an erratic president right now. We're very blessed by having them next door as our major trading partner. But that doesn't mean we also shouldn't be looking for other opportunities. And of course, the fact the Trudeau government has stymied the building of pipelines and other infrastructure has prevented us from doing that. And so now you got Wilkinson talking, we need diversification. But you need diversification, you need pipelines to get there. The Trudeau government has never cared about Canadians. They care about an ideology that is not based on fact. My presentation today was actually, I listed a whole pile of myths that need to be debunked. And that if we don't debunk these myths, we're not going to be able to progress if we keep believing in net zero, which is unattainable. Many very scientifically minded people have proven it's unattainable. Nuclear energy is great. It's clean. Yeah. You can't flip a switch and ramp up nuclear energy. It's not responsive on a natural gas is. The beauty of natural gas is you literally can. Suddenly a factory needs more energy. It doesn't, whoops, crank it right up. You can't do that with a lot of other sources of energy. So yes, it is a relatively clean source and a very flexible, affordable one too.
And I'm glad you mentioned the nuclear option because I understand environmentalist groups, they're against that as well.
Well, they're turning their tide a bit though. They are.
Okay.
They are. You're right though. Historically, they've been against nukes and I never really knew why, to be honest with you. My theory is, like with something like wind and solar, these guys are all making lots of money from it. Eh? Like that ridiculous green energy policy we had in Ontario, a lot of people pocketed a whole pile of money out of us, the consumers' pockets and the taxpayers' pockets. They can't do the same. Nukes don't offer the same subsidies to all of these green grifters.
Murray Edwards Canadian billionaire, energy mogul. He's the executive chairman, and the founder of Canadian Natural Resources Limited, largest oil and gas producer in Canada. But he endorses the NDP. He's on side with green initiatives. It does not compute for me.
Well, it's interesting, and actually, I discussed this in my remarks today, David. Okay. The fact that back in, and this was back in 10 years ago, when the Trudeau government was first elected and was, touting all of this ideologically motivated, green policy. And I remember seeing the heads of major oil and gas companies standing up on podium and Rachel Notley was the Premier of Alberta at the time, with Trudeau and Notley saying, we're going to kill your industry, and they're all sort of standing there nodding and winking, which is utterly ridiculous. It seems once they make a lot of money, which they personally do, they abandon the rest of us who need to consume affordable, reliable energy in Canada. So yeah, you're right, it's perverse. Don't forget too, though, David, there's a lot of small and medium-sized players in the energy industry. It's not all the big guys, and they have a very different opinion. They would be booing Wilkinson. We were told there was all these green jobs that were going to pay people a fortune, and they haven't materialized. We were told...
No, green policies have killed jobs.
Well, they unless they're heavily subsidized by the taxpayer, they don't exist. We were told EVs were going to be great. Well, the people tried them out for a while, and they're going, ooh, this is a lot more of a problem than I thought it was going to be. We were told wind power and solar power were going to replace fossil fuels. No, they can't. They're unreliable, hugely expensive, so the truth is starting to come out. And we see, like, you want to talk about Mark Carney, who is the father of net zero on a global basis. He created all these business organizations with investors and so on for net zero, ESG, I should say, and so on. It's all falling apart now because businesses are realizing they were sold a bill of goods.
Mark Carney, who describes himself as an outsider, I think he's the ultimate insider, but incredibly, he might be even worse when it comes to the fossil fuel industry than Justin Trudeau. Your thoughts?
I think he will be worse, to be honest with you. If you read his book and know anything about what he's done on the international stage, he's been extremely rigid and dogged, and it's kind of like he doesn't care what happens to businesses or their employees when he imposes these incredibly strict. I mean, I remember seeing him say, well, if businesses don't adhere to this, well, they're going to be bankrupt because they won't be getting any financing. He wants banks to pull loans from companies that don't adhere to his whims on the climate. And this kind of stuff is draconian dictator kind of stuff, if you ask me. He's trying to present himself as sort of Mr. Nicey-nicey now, but I don't think that's the real Carney.
In less than a month, April 1st, April Fool's Day fittingly, the carbon tax goes up again. If Carney is more of the same or even worse than Justin Trudeau, what do you think of Pierre Poilievre's initiatives, first and foremost, axing the carbon tax?
Well, one thing that I've said quite a bit recently is that if Canada was serious about actually trying to protect Canadians, instead of saying they're going to spend all kinds of our tax dollars again on bailing out companies and enhanced EI or whatever form it takes, they could drop the carbon tax. And I'm talking about the consumer carbon tax, and a lot of people don't realize there's also an industrial carbon tax. There's really two carbon taxes currently, and if they drop both of those, that would significantly blunt the impact of Trump's tariffs. But they're not doing it unless we're going to get surprised sometime. I wonder if Carney is going to become Prime Minister and try to be the hero by dropping the consumer carbon tax.
Oh, you mean they're going to pass on the cost to the consumer?
Yeah, of course they are. I mean, it's phony baloney. Carney himself just talked about a shadow carbon tax. Well, that sounds promising. But of course, whatever you impose on business, first of all, it hurts business, hurts our competitiveness, and secondly, of course, the consumer always pays in the end. That's the way Economics 100 works, and so don't buy that, folks. That's just another sleight of hand carbon tax that we'll have to deal with that'll hurt our economy and hurt consumers.
If you had the ear of those in power, the Prime Minister, the Energy Minister, what would you tell them by way of advice?
Well, I said it this morning in my presentation. Number one, get rid of the carbon tax, both elements of it, industrial and consumer. Number two, show you're serious, government. Get rid of the emissions cap that you're planning to impose on the oil and gas sector. Get rid of the so-called No More Pipelines Act, the Impact Assessment Act, more formally known. Make some actions that mean that indicate you mean what you say, because this Liberal government is classic for saying one thing and then doing absolutely nothing. Yes. So, and I would say to the senior energy people, get after the government to do precisely those things, so that we're not only showing Trump that we're serious, we're helping our own economy. A lot of the stuff Trump's doing, and a lot of it is erratic and so on, but a lot of what he's doing is stuff that we should never have made ourselves vulnerable to in the first place. But we did. We weakened our country, we weakened our economy, and now we're suffering the fallout from that.
100%, Catherine, and I just think it is nothing short of tragic that as a nation we sit atop literally trillions of dollars of energy wealth that we cannot or will not send to market. Catherine, I want to thank you for your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, David.
Okay. Hey folks, I know you love it when Rebel News brings you the other side of the story, but unlike the mainstream media who get funded by Justin Trudeau, we don't receive a nickel's worth of government funding, nor would we accept it if offered. But can you help us out? Can you go to rebelfieldreports.com? That's rebelfieldreports.com. And if you're able to, kindly make a donation.